Well, hello, and welcome to Tune Into Gaming.
Oh, hi there.
Ohio there.
I'm not in Ohio,
No,
but
neither
I
am
am Quactical.
And I'm North Kozar.
Are you now?
Yeah.
What are we going to be talking about today? Because I have no clue.
Oh, I'm supposed to know these things?
Yeah.
Frantically scrambles through paper. So,
Scramble.
we're going to probably have a little bit of a shorter episode, but it's going to go by really quick because we're going to talk about racing games. So we're going to make a lap record.
Zoom.
Probably going to talk about Need for Speed and Burnout, as well as some open world games. And then, in lieu of the mystery sound segment, which we've done for the past 10 episodes, we thought we would shake things up a little bit. And we have
A shake.
a sample of music that we're going to talk about a little bit. And we'll see where our music discussion takes us. Because the last time we talked about music, we got off on all sorts of tangents. So it'll just be us talking about a little bit of music.
Blurble.
All of the blurbles.
I like blurbling.
You started it exactly when the Skype call said 4 minutes and 20 seconds.
Exactly.
That was when you started saying blurble.
Quality content. Totally planned. 100%.
Totally intentional. 100%.
Untentional. Things that make you untense.
I need some of that in my life.
Doesn't everyone?
What would that be? Is that like the moon that walks on the beach, scented candles in the rain?
What?
I don't know. Trying to quote.
Scented candles in the rain?
Yeah, because rain has a rain smell.
I mean, I guess maybe that's if you had them in little like glass jars, that would be one way to make a blurble sound.
Oh, right, because the rain would put the candle out. Got it.
Something like that. Speaking of which, not speaking of which at all, but did some karaoke this week, which was pretty fun. Belted out I Need a Hero, you know? This is pretty great. Slayed. Hashtag slaying.
Do you need a hero?
No, not anymore.
Okay.
I did then, but, you know, I'm kind of over it.
Okay. Singing the song helped you achieve your hero status.
Yeah, it was just like an in-the-moment kind of deal.
Well, that's cool. Do you often go and karaoke?
No, it was something with my company.
Oh, nice.
And holy cow, was there a lot of alcohol.
Usually, wouldn't there have to be?
Kids, cover your ears.
It involves singing publicly in front of a lot of people.
Yeah. And then also Korean barbecue, which is just lots of meat. Delicious meat.
I don't know that would I have been to a Korean barbecue?
I'm not sure. But basically it's like you sit at a table with like 4 or 5 people and there's a grill in the middle and they bring you plates of different kinds of meat and you throw it on the grill. And then when it's done cooking, you grab it and you eat it.
So not like, what was that restaurant back home? Benihana or whatever?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not just back home, but
whatever.
It's other places
The only
too.
time I've been to it was, shut up. It's like an actual real chain. Okay. But yeah, it's you cook it yourself instead of the show.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
But it's really delicious and also kind of expensive. So I'm glad that the company was paying for it and not me. That makes things very nice.
That always, is better when you don't have to pay for the food and you still get food.
As opposed to having to pay for no food.
And yeah, not getting any food, that's the worst.
Although one of my coworkers did get like a large shard of glass in her shot glass and like started drinking it and then was like pulling this piece of glass out of her mouth. I was like, what the fuck? That's not
good.
Yeah, it was only slightly terrifying.
You don't really want that. That's how the bad things happen.
0% want.
Well, aside from karaokeing, what have you been playing in these past 2 weeks since we last convened?
Well, I've been playing a little bit of Mario Kart. That was fun. Mario Kart 8 for the Wii U that is now newly in my apartment.
Nice.
So that was pretty fun. Yeah, with my roommate and one of her friends last night. We had some Babu Peshu shenanigans. Babu Peshu being Baby Peach in strange gibberish speak. Also, there's Babaluugu, Baby Luigi. And Babu Dezu, which is Baby Daisy.
I like it. Wait, there's Baby Daisy?
Yes.
That's like a selectable character?
I'm pretty sure. Unless it was maybe just a Baby Peach skin.
That's weird.
But yeah, it was... I've forgotten how terrible I am at that game. Because like drifting is very, very, very important. And then, yeah.
I was gonna ask how did it go? Because I haven't played Mario Kart 8, I think, aside from like one or two times. And so the last or the most newest Mario Kart game I've spent some significant time for was the one for the Wii with all the motion controls, and it was just bad.
Oh yeah. See this, like I was using the Pro controller.
Nice.
I've definitely always liked Mario Kart. I think actually this version is the version I've played close to the most, just because of how much I played it in college with some friends.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, we just hang out and drink and play Mario Kart.
Sounds like a grand old time.
Yeah. I mean, the game's challenging and frustrating enough sometimes because, you can be in second and then the game's like, you need to be in last today.
Yep.
With all the rubber band AI. So, being nice and intoxicated and not giving a shit just makes things that much more fun.
Yeah. Even without the computers, just blue shells and everything bad can happen.
Blue shells, worst.
I think my favorite Mario Kart game, granted, again, I haven't played much of Mario Kart 8, but I still really like Double Dash.
I think that's actually one of the ones I've played the least of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we played a lot of Mario Kart 64.
Yep, back in the day.
Back in the day. Boy, how time flies.
Throw another alarm clock out the window.
Only the third one this week.
Okay. That's not too bad. Yeah, but the thing that was nice about Double Dash was just that I guess the handling of the cars and everything was really nice.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how it is in Mario Kart 8, but there were like different cars that you selected that sort of had different stats as well.
Yeah.
So you could kind of like pick your racing style, I guess.
Yeah, that's how it is in 8, except
Cool.
there's bikes as well, which
Oh,
are generally the more drifty of the kart types, I think. But they all have different stats, and then you can pick wheels, and you can pick like a glider thing as well.
yeah, that's right, because you like go upside down and fly through the air and stuff.
Yeah. So it's an interesting combination of like F-Zero and stuff like that. I know a lot of people have been saying that they have wanted a new F-Zero game. But I think in some ways the like upside downness of Mario Kart 8 has not maybe alleviated people's desire, but they've sort of maybe just tried to like please everyone with the addition of that element, because it is kind of cool and I do appreciate it, but I also do miss like playing F-Zero.
It is weird that they haven't done another F-Zero game, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Nintendo's been trying to like break new ground and come out with new franchises or just do new stuff with old ones. So I'm surprised that they haven't done that with have an actual Metroid game, not the Federation Force one, which wasn't really an actual Metroid game, but
yeah, I mean, it probably just has to do with whatever they perceive as the current fan base of F-Zero being small for whatever reason, or the popularity of the original games. I don't know. Because it's like Captain Falcon has been such a core character to Smash. And so you'd think that like there would be interest in bringing that back. Especially because like F-Zero, as far as like, a title being on a Nintendo system, was definitely the more like, I don't want to say like hardcore, but just like more like racing game compared to Mario Kart, where Mario Kart's like party racing.
Right, definitely. It's the more intense, you're going fast, don't get exploded kind of racing game.
But I think if I recall, the mechanic I really liked about it too was that when you boosted, that actually was also your health or your shields or something like that.
Oh, really?
Or it like did damage to you, so that if you like wanted to go really fast and catch up, you are putting yourself at a risk of if somebody like smacked you, you were more likely to die. So that was kind of interesting because it made this trade-off between like keeping yourself safe and like not bumping into people, so like your health stayed high, and then like using your boost wisely to speed through the straightaway sections of the map. But then if you started screwing up, you'd go flying off the course at other points and like lose a bunch of health there.
Yeah, I'm just surprised that, I mean, them not doing a new F-Zero game is whatever, but I'm surprised that they haven't like tried to remake one of them just like in, an HD version or something, because they've been doing that a lot lately. That
it certainly is the age of remakes.
Yeah, I'm certainly, if I feel like it would do well, or I mean, I would get it. It'd be fun.
And that's all it needs. As long as one person gets it, then that means it did well.
As long as I play it, that's all that really matters, right?
Exactly.
but I didn't really play a ton of F-Zero. What is it about F-Zero that makes it different from like regular car racing games?
I mean, it's really I don't know how to describe the extra third dimension, but it's basically like you can go upside down. So the courses are like tubes through space, and you can be on all sides of them at any given point.
Oh, okay.
So it's not a traditional like your car is held to the road by gravity.
Gravity doesn't matter. It's out the window, much
Yeah.
like the alarm clock.
And then there's different boost pads. And like I was saying, I think you refresh your health every lap.
Okay.
But then you can use a boost that like uses up your health. I think. I may be missing it on like some slight details, but it had that dynamic, which is kind of interesting. And then I'm pretty sure you could like quick spin into other cars, and like if you smacked them into a wall, you could potentially blow them up, etc. And I think you had a certain number of lives per course.
Okay. So it's not just like
and
one and done.
Yeah, and then it was like Grand Prix style racing. So it's like you'd have like several courses, and you'd have a place that was persistent over the number of tracks that you selected, etc. And there was a ton of different characters, and like all the characters had different cars, which actually had a lot of different stats.
That's cool.
So there were some that were more tanky and bulky, and then some that were like speedier, but if you smacked into them, they would die almost instantly, kind of thing.
Right. That sounds pretty, I guess, modern for as old as the game is at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I remember there being a fairly large grid of characters. I just played it on an emulator though, so
Gotcha. That's cool though. I'll have to maybe look into that and try playing it. I played it like a few times again back in the day, but I don't have a vivid memory of it. I just remember it being kind of unique and fun.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, what was that? Do you remember if you ever played the racing game I had on my computer? Like the old like Windows 95 PC I had, and it was kind of had a vaguely sci-fi theme, but I forget what the name was. Do you remember? Do you ever remember playing that?
Based on those clues, I do not.
No. Okay. Well then.
I remember playing Burnout, but
okay. Well, that was more recently, I think.
Yeah, I don't remember the sci-fi racing game.
I mean, it was like super old school, like pixely graphics.
Yeah,
but I remember like the intro cinematic had like sort of a plot, and it was like all these people on this planet that was dying, and it used to be like a center of industry or something like that. But then there's like one last shuttle going off the planet, and so everyone's like racing to get there. Except then it was just a racing game, so like that the story wasn't actually relevant to the game at all.
I think my brain wants to remember it, but I don't know that I actually remember it.
It's like I can see some of the maps. And there was like some interesting like shortcuts that you could take if you like bounced off certain walls there, and there was like a lot of interesting stuff like that. But yeah, I just don't remember what the name of it was. Well, it serves me right for trying to think of things in my past.
Another game lost in the 10,001 games CD of yesteryear.
Actually, I don't think it was from that. I think it was something separate.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
My dad might know, but it's been a while, so also he may not.
Yeah.
Man, yeah, it is crazy to think about that, just like how many games that we've played over the years that, you know, we may never remember even playing them or the title of them, but then it's just like some vague influence and some experience that affects us later on. It's interesting.
Yeah, there's been quite a few. I mean, we talked, well, AGF wasn't a racing game, so I guess
that was
really
like a top-down shooter, yeah.
But of games that are just kind of like back in the day sort of thing, you know, that made an impression because they were cool / unique, kind of like, you know, well, remembering F-Zero for the fact that it was unique. I mean, it's a much bigger game, obviously, but like things that were unique really stuck in my mind for that reason. But not being able to find or remember like how or where it exists is unfortunate because I mean F-Zero I can find and play.
Right.
But AGF is lost in the ether of
yeah.
Who knows? Like,
I mean, how many times have we tried to just search for what that game even was? Because like the version that we had, I'm pretty sure was like a demo too.
Yeah, I know I've tried a couple of times. So,
man, some things, you know, you can't always get what you want.
Nope. can't
But
always
I guess
have cake and eat it too.
I'm making a 2D sort of like top-down shooter-y thing engine, so I guess I could just remake it, right?
Yeah, basically.
Just real quick, just whip up a clone.
Well, I mean, all you have to do is have one of the ships draw like from its shields to increase its damage, and then there you go. You've basically emulated one of the one of the unique aspects about it. So
it's funny. That's actually an interesting connecting theme between F-Zero and AGF, which is probably why I thought about it.
The shield, yeah.
Yeah.
Except not shooting, but boosting.
Right. But it's kind of cool because it's one of those mechanics that like it really emphasizes the fact that there are trade-offs, right? It's not just like, okay, you have a gun, so let's spam it always. It's like, no, you have to be strategic about when you shoot.
Right, and it's similar like with recoil or things like that in any sort of setting. It's not just like hold gun and shoot thing always.
Like Call of Duty, right?
I mean, there's recoil and stuff in that.
I just remember the joke being for, what was it? I don't know, Modern Warfare 2, where literally the best way to get headshots was just to like run and gun with the SMG because it would just like recoils directly into their head every single time.
Yeah, usually. You have steady aim, Commando Pro or something, and just run around knifing and shooting, hip firing.
Oh, man. Well, that's a segue I didn't want. Reverse.
reverse. To the left. Take it back now, y'all.
3 drifts this time.
Speaking of drifting, the game Split Second, which I think was published by Disney or whatnot, and you played some of it as well, I'm pretty sure.
Certainly did.
One of the interesting things about it wasn't just a racing game, but it was a cinematic destroy everything game. So,
and by everything we mean like airplanes, entire things. I don't know.
Yeah,
but all in like a very like movie, like massive explosions kind of way. It was interesting.
Well, so that was the quote unquote story of the game. It was like all a Hollywood thing, and they're filming these races, and so like when you go around, as you like do good driving or drift or do things, you fill up this meter. And when you go by certain spots on the map, you can activate these like explosions or things to wreck other drivers that are behind you or in front of you.
Get wrecked.
Some of them are just like an explosion happens and the thing does a thing, or some is like this airplane comes in and crashes into the ground and the whole course changes. And the story is that these are all like planned cinematic events for the racing like film or TV show that I think it was a TV show that they were doing called Split Second.
Yeah, it was like a reality TV show, I think.
Yeah.
Was what the story was.
And
which is kind of whack.
But the interesting thing about that game is that I played a decent amount of the online at one point, and there were obviously like the top 3 cars that were used just because they were the best cars, but the essentially best car was the one that was the most adept at drifting. And the reason for this is because the more you drift, the quicker your like bar thing fills up. And also the drifting in that game was kind of funky in the sense that you really like there was no downside to ever drifting. So like,
or to ever not drifting.
Yeah. That is, yeah. So like you just would drift constantly around corners, around everything. If you weren't drifting, you were like doing something wrong. And it was very much a drifting heavy focused racing game, more so than like a drive straight kind of racing game.
Yeah,
so,
you definitely spend at least 50% of the time drifting, like,
yeah,
if not more.
And it was interesting though, just because of that. It made it challenging in an unexpected way, because it's not like necessarily look out for these really scary sharp turns or whatnot. I mean, it is, but it's make sure you're doing the drifting so you can still be like, you know, in the race as well. Or I don't remember exactly how the other aspects of drifting tied into the game, but I just remember that.
I mean, I do remember that it filled up the meter.
Yeah.
And that I think it depended on the cars. Like certain cars weren't as good at drifting. They just were kind of more of the high speed ones. Because weren't there different types of ways that they used the boost pickup or something like that? No, I'm confusing it with Burnout now.
Yeah. So
it.
it's there were like sort of different classes of cars in terms of ones that were a bit sturdier, ones that were more drifty, and ones that were just fast. And usually the drifty ones were king.
Yeah, I definitely just remember that one course that you mentioned it briefly, where you hit one of the explosion points and like an airplane literally crashes into the course.
Yep. Yeah, and then the course changes because you like originally you go through a hangar, and when you activate that, you veer up and to the left around the downed, what is that tower that they have at airports?
Control tower?
Yeah, sure.
Something like that?
Yeah, the ground control to Major Tom Tower.
Yes, exactly.
So, but it was cool because you could change the layout of the racetrack in unexpected ways for other players, and it just, yeah, it was neat and unique. And I mean, I have no idea if it's worth necessarily going out and playing, but of the games that we've talked about on this podcast, Split Second was one of 2 games that I purchased based on playing a demo.
And the other one will always be legend, because that's Just Cause 2.
Yeah. Which, incidentally, now that we're talking about Just Cause 2 for a brief moment there, one of the things that was always really fun for me in that game was just driving around. And there were races in that game as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because, we're talking about some of these more traditional racing games like Split Second, and we've mentioned Burnout a little bit. I definitely want to talk about that too.
Yeah.
But then there's also like open world games that have driving, like Just Cause or GTA or like Sleeping Dogs, for example. But Just Cause really sticks out in my mind just because of how much time we spent driving around and how massive the island is. Like, there's so many pretty views, like as the sun is setting over the ocean and you're like driving along the coast. It's so picturesque.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that, having that freedom to drive everywhere, and we talked about it a while on one of the our past podcasts when we were talking about open world games, but like how the GPS system works in it is really neat in that it doesn't detract from you looking at the world, because
right, you don't have to look at the map the entire time to still be en route.
Yeah, and so you get to enjoy all the pretty views more reliably. If you're trying to go to a specific destination, or if you're like me, you just get on the fastest motorcycle and drive and weave in and out of traffic, and it's fun because it's also pretty.
But yeah, I mean, if you're not aware of what we're talking about, the when you designate a location on your map, these little like somewhat see-through yellow arrows appear in the game world itself, so you don't actually have to look at the mini map all the time to navigate. So if a turn is coming up, you'll get a couple of like chevrons pointing to the right, say, hey, you need to turn this way. They're a little easy to miss if you're not careful sometimes, but like if you're just paying attention, it's usually not too bad. But I really, really enjoy that I don't have to take my eyes off the world. And that's definitely something that like bothers me a little bit about GTA if I'm like going for an objective, because I feel like I'm always looking at the minimap. So you end up with kind of like binary gameplay where either you're like looking at the minimap and you're going to a specific location, or you're looking at the world around you and you're just messing around. Yeah. And I want to kind of do both, And
I think the thing for me is, driving around in a game like GTA it's cool and it's fun to do ridiculous stuff in a more, I guess, realistic setting. But one of the other things I really liked about Just Cause is that you're not often in the city part of the island.
Yeah.
And I like that because I'm always around buildings. And when I'm driving in real life, granted, I'm not driving like how I do in GTA, but I'm around buildings and city and whatnot. And I appreciate being able to be in a game world that is, more, not unique, but just different than what I see every day.
Yeah. I will say, though, that like GTA 5, I mean, I haven't played a lot of it at all, but it does have a lot more variety of terrain than like GTA 4 does, for example.
Yeah, because you've got like the mountains and whatnot that you can go out to and sort of like dirt bike.
I mean, it really is just a microcosm of Southern California.
Yes, it is.
But then like Sleeping Dogs is a game where I love the driving in that game. And if you're not familiar with Sleeping Dogs, it's another like GTA-like game, but it's set in Hong Kong. Play as an undercover cop infiltrating the gangs there.
Yep.
It's really, really great game. Fantastic story. Like really well written characters with like interesting development. But then just the gameplay is great too. And the driving is really interesting, especially because you have to drive on the wrong side of the friggin' road.
Of the games that I've played, Sleeping Dogs definitely made me feel the most immersed. And granted, I have no idea the levels of authenticity. Maybe someone who lives there would be like, this is all wrong, but it doesn't matter. The fact that you are driving on the left side of the road really, like, it just...
It sinks home, yeah.
It does. And it's such a little detail that, I mean, it makes sense, obviously, but it really adds to the immersion factor for me. And I think that because there is a lot of driving and things that you do, I don't know. I really appreciated it. It was a really cool.
Yeah.
It was a really cool way to sort of really root you in the game world.
Yeah, it's definitely very immersive. I took a lot of musical inspiration actually from some of the radio tracks, like especially when it was like raining really heavily in the game.
Yeah.
And actually, when we do our music sample segment later on, the piece of music that I selected is actually reminded me of playing Sleeping Dogs and like driving through the city in the rain quite a bit. But we can talk about that later too.
Okay.
But yeah, it definitely seemed just like very picturesque landscapes, you know. I don't know, like I feel like the really dark, like nighttime rainy driving is just kind of a awesome thing in games in general.
Yeah. Well, that's and I don't know if I've talked about it on this podcast, but there's a moment where near at the end of the game, avoiding spoilers, but you're driving to the end game location, and as you're driving, it's sort of like he's having these memories go through his head, and so there's lines of dialogue, and I don't know if it's scripted, but it's dark and rainy, and there was a specific song playing that just fit, like on the in-game radio, that fit the mood perfectly. And I have no idea if the song was scripted. I didn't change the radio because it fit perfectly, but all of these elements that may or may not have just been coincidence all like combined together for such a like dark and moody, you know, final like reflection moment.
Yeah, that game is just moody as hell.
Oh, totally. It was very dramatic and moody, but it was cool how, you know, like you were saying, driving through the dark and the rain with this music really just like amped everything up to this heightened level of drama and suspense and tension that really amplified the story for me, especially near there at the end. So
unlike Just Cause, where it's not quite as immersive.
No.
But it's fun for different reasons.
It is. Yeah. No, and there's no in-game radio, is there?
No, but I do recall that like some of the like country driving music, or no, it wasn't the driving music. It was the when you're on your parachute and you're like floating through the air. You just got this like really calm, peaceful kind of floaty music.
You got this like secret agent guitar twang, like meow, 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 like kind of happening, just like subtle, and you'd get like the wind noise as you're like flying through the air in the parachute.
Yeah, good talk stuff. About ambiance. Yeah. It's interesting, like how much driving games and the experience of them is like. I think it's a genre where the graphics and like the sound and stuff really, really matter a lot. Like especially hearing the sound of the cars.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like all that ambiance is very, very necessary for a racing game. Because if you're just like, you know, driving straight on a boring highway, it's like, it's not fun.
Yeah.
It's all about kind of how the levels look and the experience of exploring them and experiencing them.
Oh, totally. Well, you think about
the experience of experiencing them.
The experience of experiencing them is a big deal. Like, you know, it's
a very important experience.
We've talked about the open world driving, and a lot of that is that sense of exploration, and it's tied into that because that's kind of an integral part of the open world game. However, when you have just a racing game, that visual is still very important because, I mean, like Split Second obviously has huge cinematics and crazy shenanigans that are going on. But I mean, you look at a game like Forza that has these incredibly beautiful cars in these beautiful landscapes, and like you said, the graphics are really important to that.
And that's very much more about that like simulation immersion, where it's like we have recreated these vehicles, you know, down to the nut and bolt, right? Like,
yeah. And it's neat to again be immersed in that way. And like you said, the graphics really, I think, add to that immersion, but also the sounds of the environment that you're in on the track, and the sounds of the car and the rev of the engine or the purr of the engine, or however you want to describe it, that are pretty important. And I think that there's a lot of different, I don't want to say caliber, but types of racing games in that sense, where you have like your Burnout or your Need for Speed or your Forza that are kind of like different tiers on, you know, here are cars that are real cars, or here are cars that are, you know, pretty much real cars, but let's have some fun with it. And in terms of, I guess, the realism spectrum of things,
I definitely think, you know, maybe my preference and our preference is one for like the open world driving. Because like my favorite racing game, I think at this point, is Burnout Paradise, as far as like a like actual racing game.
Right.
And then like we obviously like the Just Cause and stuff. But, you know, for me, I don't think I've ever gotten into like games like Forza quite as much. I definitely like the more fun mechanics than the like hyper realistic
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to racing games.
I don't think either of us are very big, fancy racing car buffs. So
No.
that, we can appreciate and be like, wow, that's a really cool looking car. But it's not going to have the same impact as someone who knows the car and who wants that car in real life or something.
But we'd be like, that's a really cool looking sci-fi car just as easily. So like,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be realistic.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh man, talk about sci-fi cars. The Rush, like 2048 or whatever it was. 2048. That's a different thing. What was the year of that one? Where it had the trick level where like the cars had wings and you could flip them around and do different stunts.
Was it 2048?
I don't know.
2049? What? Hold on. I'll look it up. Talk about it for
2049. I was only 1 year off.
It was, yeah. So it's San Francisco Rush 2049, which is really old. I guess originally released for the Dreamcast and arcade. That's funny. Oh, and the N64. Okay, but it's a futuristic racing game that puts you in future San Francisco. And
puts you in the future. Yeah.
They were, interesting polygonal shaped cars, but it was fun for sure.
Yeah. I remember that game had a lot of like shortcuts. That's definitely like a core racing game like mechanic.
I would say so. For most racing games, yeah, it's pretty vital.
And like I definitely can't think of one that doesn't have them, actually.
I don't really know what Forza does.
Yeah, I guess
with shortcuts, but
the ones that I've played,
a lot of them have some kind of shortcut or long cut, the kind of thing where you're like, this looks like a shortcut, and it's like, nope. And
troll.
Learning the maps is a pretty important thing as well.
Whereas like Burnout, I mean, it doesn't really have specific shortcuts, although for some routes it does. But if you're not familiar with Burnout, it's more of like an open world racing game where there's a city. And each intersection basically is its own like race or some type of event. And so when you go there, you start a race, but you just have to race to like there's like 6 different destinations. So from whatever intersection you start off, you have to race to one of the destinations. And you can take almost any route that you want. But of course, like if you take a route that takes longer, you're going to lose.
So that's kind of really incorporating learning the game and playing to figure out what route is going to be the most efficient or the most ideal. So that's. But
then you also have some like optimization of, if I'm going to be driving in this part of the city, then like maybe I'll want this car. And then of course like you unlock different cars. What's cool too is that the mechanic for unlocking the more advanced cars is you have to complete some of the events and then you unlock the cars to drive around the city. So like as you're driving, you see like other racers driving around, and if you like beat them up, like crash into their car and make them crash, you then get to use that car.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And so that's how you like fully unlock the new, more advanced vehicles.
Huh. So
that was kind of interesting. You go smack into them.
It's like GTA without getting out of the car.
Yeah. But you can also do that second unlock step. If you're there's these like, I almost want to call them like rumble modes, but they're basically like destruction races where instead of having to get to a certain destination, you have to destroy a certain number of cars or be the one who's destroyed the most. And if you destroy one of the other cars in that mode, you also unlock them. So it's cool.
I think that's what I remember most about Burnout. And again, I don't have a ton of experience or familiarity with playing it, but I do remember the sort of destruction derby races where you had to destroy the other cars. That's my memory of Burnout.
There's some much larger like trucks and stuff in that game too.
Mm-hmm.
I do recall that Split Second had trucks, but weren't they weird like hybrid trucks or something?
That was the sturdier vehicle, and again, they're not really good. It was the kind of thing where like when an explosion happens near you and it's not going to destroy your car, if you're in a truck or like a heavier vehicle, you're not going to get like knocked around as much. But it's not really worth the trade-off, honestly.
For the no maneuverability or speed or anything except for destructive power.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely always liked Burnout though. Played hundreds of hours of it at this point.
Yeah.
Like several playthroughs. And just because of like all the unlockable stuff too, it's fun to just kind of like play through and then start over and play through. Because you can play out the different cars each time. And there's tons of like shortcuts and like random unlockables to do as well.
That's cool. I'll have to look into that and see, because it sounds like a kind of unique early hybridization of the open world game,
Yeah.
but it's just in a car.
Yeah. Oh, and I think the other type of event was like there's like a stunt run that you could do.
That's cool.
So depending on the different flips and like tricks you do.
Nice.
And I think in that game, the way that you get your car to do different flips is like you want to drift and like so start your car spinning right before you go off the jump. So you can get like different curves that way.
That's cool.
But I think the way it works is that if you crash, you like lost your points. So you really actually had to make sure that it worked.
Yeah, you gotta land
land it.
One of the things that is cool is having those different modes in a racing game, so it's not just, here's a race. I mean, not that Kirby Air Ride is at all fitting into the racing game category, what we're talking about with cars specifically.
I mean, but it is in the sense
it
of
is.
the modes,
It is a racing game, but I mean, having the main look, you're gonna pick a track and you're gonna pick a car and you're gonna race mode. But then having those alternatives like the Destruction Derby or, for Kirby Air Ride City Trial, I think is cool. And one of the things that I really liked is Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, which we played on the GameCube, again, back in the day, was cool because it was not only just, here's a racing game, you're doing stuff, but it had the whole element of there's police going after you. And the thing that was fun was being able to play as the police going after the racers. And
because we'd like switch back and forth doing that. I remember that being really fun.
Yeah, and so it adds another level to that racing game where not only now are you racing, but you're racing to outrun the other racers and the cops, and it was a cool
And couldn't you put down like spike strips and get like assist cars or something like that?
As the cops, you had like a certain number of uses. You could call in a helicopter or a spike strip, or I think you could call in like an AI backup cop car or something. You had like 3 abilities essentially that you could use throughout your pursuit.
It's an early form of MOBA.
Yeah, sure. Well, sure.
We'll go with that.
We'll go with that. Why not? Right?
Yeah, I definitely remember playing that. Other than that, I think the only other Need for Speed game I've played was High Stakes.
Okay.
Which was a PC one that I had, and I don't remember anything very much about it except for the single player. But what was interesting about the single player is like, you'd go through different circuits and you'd like earn money. And you'd have to buy new cars. And if you like smacked up the cars while you were racing, you had to repair them. So that was like part of what you had to earn the money for.
Yeah.
But the game was called High Stakes because some of the like boss missions was you had to do these like one-on-one races with somebody else. And if you won their car. And if you lost your car.
I think I played that a little bit because I remember having to do a couple of those races in a PC Need for Speed game that I played some of.
But I remember the frustrating part about it was some of them it'd be like, oh, hey, here's this fancy car. You can do this high stakes thing but it's some car that you've never used before against some other car. And I remember one time it was like, this car won't fucking turn. Like I got this like Mercedes or something that literally would not turn. And I just lost it. And like, that was I think I got stuck actually because I couldn't complete that race. And that was the next one to advance to like the next stage of circuits.
Oh, no.
It's like, this car won't fucking turn. Help. But it may have been like a computer issue because I remember I had like FPS problems back when I had a really, really crappy laptop.
Oh, back in the day.
You could even call it a crap top.
We should keep a counter of all the times that me and or you say back in the day.
In the day.
Back in the day. Back in the day.
Back in the day? Back in the day? Back in the day?
Yeah, I guess thinking about, outside of the box with racing games, Kirby Air Ride was a pretty fun one. But the thing that made Kirby Air Ride fun wasn't the racing mode. That was actually one of the least fun modes.
Just because there weren't very many interesting racing mechanics. It was just kind of,
right.
Here you can just go, I guess.
Oh, and that's, I think, for us, probably one of the things that is less of an appeal with Forza, because we were interested in Kirby Air Ride for the Kirby, but we're not interested in the cars for the Forza. So there's kind of that disconnect there into what gets us into the game for just like standard racing. And again, I haven't played a ton of Forza, but I do, really appreciate what it does for, again, that immersion factor and the graphics, obviously. I think that it's really top notch, but I think that you and I both prefer a little bit less realistic of a racing game for the sake of more entertaining and unique gameplay.
I mean, I think we could say that across the board, just not for just racing games. Like,
Just in general, yeah.
when it comes to shooters and stuff, like I'd rather have something that has like a unique visual aesthetic, and design, as opposed to something that's trying to be like, this is realistic, every down to the dust spec military shooter.
Yeah.
Down to the dust spec.
Yeah, the dust level of graphics is very important these days.
Kind of crazy. Like, and yeah, like I do acknowledge that it adds a large level of visual immersion, but I don't think you like actually sacrifice a lot of immersion or sacrifice any immersion at all by having something that has its own just unique visual aesthetic that speaks to the design, right?
Oh, definitely.
Like a game like Borderlands, like I don't think you miss out on the immersion because it's not realistic graphics.
Right.
But the graphics all make sense and are coherent and like fit the gameplay aesthetic and design. So it's immersive because of that.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It needs to be something that's authentic to the game, not necessarily authentic in terms of the real life experience.
Yeah.
So
and that's why, like, Split Second does a really great job of that, right? Obviously, these are not realistic, but you have these really like cool looking explosions in a realistic like way, but it's not like truly realistic.
Right. That's kind of how they got around it. They were like,
yeah,
this isn't real. It's all like on a Hollywood lot being filmed and scripted, or, they were like, we're not really putting these drivers in danger. So, yeah, we can do this because we're Disney. Right?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to imagine the guy selling this pitch. He's like,
for this reality TV show. Yeah, it's a little bit ridiculous when you think about that, considering how many times your car explodes per race.
Yep.
Like literally just explodes in a fireball.
Yep.
Like, oh, that driver's still alive.
He's fine.
Totally.
It's in the script. Nothing wrong here.
If your character dies in the script, he dies for real.
Yeah, well, that is how that works, unfortunately.
Wasn't that a horror movie where it was like there was the video game? If you die in the game, you die in real life. I know that's a meme. I just don't know what the movie was.
It was wasn't it just called Gamer?
I don't know.
I think it was just called Gamer, and it was really not good. Oh, I typed in not gamer. Hold on.
Not gamer.
Yeah, Gamer 2009.
Wow,
28% on Rotten Tomatoes. Each week, a death row inmate battles his fellow prisoners in a violent online game called Slayers. His every move controlled by a young gamer's remote device. To the players, they're just simulated characters. But it was a critical component of a plan to end high-tech slavery. I don't know.
That's something different. The movie I was thinking of, it was like there's these like teenagers in a house and they're like playing a video game, and it looks like a platform or something, and one of them dies, and then like some like monster like kills them. Like it. But if you die in the game, you die in real life.
Oh, like a horror game or movie.
Horror movie, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure what that is.
I just remember it being like a meme because just you die in the game, you die in real life.
Maybe it was just a meme video.
I remember the meme. There's so many things that are like that where I remember the meme and not the source. Like it's so bad.
Welcome to the internet, yeah.
Welcome to life and hot spicy memes. Throwback.
But yeah.
Bum, bum, bum.
I think that there's a lot of diversity in racing games these days, but I also think that there's kind of not like streamlined, but I think that games that are hearkening more to the realistic Forza side of things are becoming more popular, and so we're seeing less of the Burnout or the Need for Speed kind of games, which Need for Speed has gotten much more, quote unquote realistic as newer games have come out.
Really?
I don't even know what the most recent Need for Speed game
I haven't followed that franchise in a long time.
was that came out, but
yeah, both of the Need for Speed games we mentioned are at least 10 years old, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it.
There's also the Grid games, which I haven't played at all, but I do own them. I think I got them in a humble monthly bundle, but I should check those out at some point too.
Yeah,
do you know much about them?
I do not.
You do not?
I think I have one of them. Maybe? I have so many games on Steam. I don't even know what I have anymore. Like my tab for looking at my games on Steam is just installed so that I don't get confused.
Oh yeah, me too. Which also causes me to forget about all the things that I have on there that just that I don't install.
Yep, me too.
The life struggle. It's
really
real.
though. Too many games.
Yeah. Well, shall we move on to our music sample?
Sure. So, in lieu of the mystery sound this episode, we have a video game music sample that we're going to listen to.
It's actually not a video game music sample, but it's like
Oh,
cinematic-y sounding. So I figured it was appropriate anyway.
gotcha. A cinematic-y sounding music sample that we'll talk about.
Let me just introduce it a little bit.
Go for
So
it.
I'm really into jazz and jazz fusion, and this is an excerpt of a track off of an album by a pianist by the name of Bill Laurance. He's associated with the jazz fusion group Snarky Puppy, and he's done these cool solo projects. This album is called Flint, I believe, and it's just a really awesome combination of different jazz styles and then a really like cinematic kind of composition. Like each of the tracks really has its own kind of like up and down journey. And I like I was mentioning earlier in the podcast, this particular piece really, really reminds me of kind of that like dark, moody night, driving around in like sleeping dogs, like the melancholy, happy, almost kind of like feeling and theme to it. But anyway, so the track is called "The Good Things."
That's pretty cool. I definitely see what you're talking about with the that sort of melancholy, but like
Yeah.
brooding but bittersweet happening in there.
Mm-hmm. But then when the drums come in, just because of like how like driving and fast they are, like that's what really like tied those themes together, right? Because like the piano starts and it's like, okay, you wouldn't think of this as like driving music necessarily, right? But then just like the speed of the underlying rhythm, like really, I think adds a lot of motion to the harmony that's happening.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I have to say that I really, really like this a lot because I'm biased towards pieces of music that have this contrasting, conflicting, like slow melody, with this layered, fast, double timed percussion happening.
Right.
Because it really creates this strong push pull effect that you're like being pulled really hard in one direction with the speed and the franticness of the percussion, but at the same time you're being sort of weaned into this like calming melody that is in this case very kind of moody, and it creates this like I don't know the word that I want to use.
It creates a lot of tension and contrast and motion.
Yeah, and
I think motion is really like the way I would describe it. And you're right, because it's pulling you and like keeping you in a place at the same time. So it really just stretches things.
And for something that you're incorporating into, like you were saying, the themes of this dark and rainy sort of nighttime driving scenario, mm-hmm. I think that this adds a lot of mystery as well. In kind of the moodiness of the piano, you're going somewhere and it's important. Again, that's sort of reinforced by the percussion that's driving when that comes in, but you don't really know what is happening or what is going to happen, or there's something that you aren't being told as a listener to this piece of music, and you don't really know what that is, and maybe you never find it out, but you're on this journey anyway. Like that's kind of some of the story that I get from it.
Yeah, and I just think it's so cool that there are pieces of music like that can give you so many strong either emotions or like, visual ideas. And, the rest of the track actually doesn't quite remind me of driving. It goes to other themes and other places. But what's interesting to me about that segment is just that like it was very, very strong the first time I listened to it. And I think I had just played Sleeping Dogs too.
Even better.
But, you know, it's really interesting just how those associations get formed and how certain themes and certain ideas are connectable for people. And then especially once you like give someone the seed of what the idea is, it's like, you know, you can't unsee it, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you totally planted that in my head before even listening to it. You were like, this is what this makes me think of. And I'm like, yeah, that's what that makes me think of too.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, when we were talking about the authenticity to the game and having that immersion factor, I won't get too much on my soapbox about immersion, but like when you have that authenticity between the sounds and the visual, that's what's, you know, really important and reinforcing of that. So basically you telling me, you told me this is the scene, you know, essentially. So I created that visual in my head. And so then when I heard it, it matched up to that. And so I was like, oh yeah, I get it. I see it. It makes sense. But if it had been something like, you know, the Star Wars Imperial March, I'm like, wait, this is supposed to be, you know, driving in the rain, moody music. Not that it isn't.
But then you're still picturing
scary.
that.
You're
so then you
picturing
see the juxtaposition of now the sound, which doesn't seem to match the visual. Okay, but that creates a third effect, right? That does something else. And I think that's the interesting part about video game music is that you have this combination of music that's composed specifically for the scene in a video game. And then sometimes you have music that's from something else that's made to make you think of something else to add on to a scene that you have that's separate, right?
Yeah.
Like you have these multiple ways that it's utilized.
And I think that it really is important when incorporating all of that together to keep in mind what the big picture vision is. Because yeah, you could totally have something left field that fits in there and it might work in a game like, you know, like Borderlands that sort of already has that throwing curveballs weird quirkiness. But if you're going for something like the immersion of Sleeping Dogs and you want to really create this sense that you are in Hong Kong, you are this moody police investigator doing his job type of thing, then you need something that's going to reinforce that. And I think that, you know, when you have the visual and have it match up with either the sound effects or the music, it is important to make sure that that is authentic to the experience you want. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be realistic or
it's funny that you should mention Borderlands in that context because, you know, the Cage the Elephant tracks that they have in both Borderlands 1 and 2 fit so perfectly.
Oh, like, yes. I mean, whenever,
so it's just a perfect example of this concept.
Yeah, it works very well. And that's like what you were saying, taking music that was composed specifically for the game or taking existing tracks in other ways and kind of adding it to the game. Well, and I think of like Mass Effect 1. I can't remember the name of the group or the piece of music that plays like during the credits. There's just like this weird sort of post-rock sounding melancholy thing that played during the credits, and it was really neat. But I don't remember.
And then the music in that game, you know, it was funny. I remember you mentioning to me at one point, I don't remember exactly when this was, but because like when you play the game and you listen to the music, it sounds a certain way. And then you listen to the music outside the context of the game, and it sounds totally different. Oh, like it still sounds like Mass Effect. You can still very clearly identify that this is what it's from, but it just sounds so different. You hear all these parts of it that you weren't paying attention to because now it's the primary focus of your attention, right?
Right. Well, and that's just good composing. When you create the music and you can instantly hear like, yep, this is from that. Like, I think that there's certain tracks, you know, going back, I guess, to Star Wars that you hear and you're like, yeah, this sounds like Star Wars. But by and large, a lot of, you know, quote unquote cinematic music for film kind of all sounds the same. Sure, there might be like thematic elements that are unique to a film or a series or whatnot, but by and large, you're like, yeah, that sounds like cinematic film music. Whereas
because they use a similar palette of sounds. That's why. Yeah,
and I think that video games have a much stronger reason to tie in the music to it because it's such an important part of the experience. Not that it's unimportant for film, but there's this expectation, this Hollywood cinematic expectation that this is how the film music should be.
This is the sound of something being epic.
Yeah, exactly. No, yeah, you have to have the big drums and you have to have all of that. Whereas with
and the swelling strings, etc.
Yeah, whereas with the game, like I think that there is a style that you could say like this sounds distinctly Pokemon. Like it sounds like it's from a Pokemon game, or it sounds like it's from, you know, some other, or like Mass Effect. It sounds like it's from a Mass Effect game, which has that very sci-fi arpeggiated synth thing going on that blends in some strings and whatnot.
Right. But so having that clear identity come out through the music is in some ways more important for video game music than it is for film music.
Right, because most of the time, in film, you're scripting something, and so you know how the audience is going to receive it because it's all intentional. It's intentional in the fact that it's scripted, so it's going to appear one way, how you portray it. But in a game, there's a lot of other elements in terms of what the player might do. And so you can...
in different scenarios that they'll actually associate with hearing that music. Like,
right.
The moments where you go, man, that music really fits so perfectly. Those are the moments you're going to remember. And for each individual person who plays the game, that moment is going to be a different moment.
Right, like me discussing the scene that I had in Sleeping Dogs where all of these perhaps random elements lined up to make this really memorable moment for me driving in the rain. Like, who knows? Who knows if anyone else had that kind of moment in the game like I did with that music, but I think that it really adds another level of, you know, reinforcing that immersion when you have music that fits. And I mean, obviously you want music that fits, but that adds to the bigger picture of the game.
Yeah, it's funny. I just realized another association that I had with the sample, as well as kind of the driving in the rain thing, because the Minecraft rainy music is also that kind of like gentle piano. So this is like the tense version of that.
Yeah, kind of.
I also really like, just especially to go more on like the music genre studies side, that modern jazz in a lot of ways is expanding itself so much. Like, you know, I mentioned that like that's a drum and bass beat, right? That the drums are using in that track. And this is like a jazz fusion album, right? So I think it's really cool that those kinds of elements are blending together so much more. Because it creates a larger palette for these themes to be combined and to create different feelings. And obviously this is a feeling and this is a theme that I really appreciate and get a lot of value out of. So it's like, I'm very happy to see that artists are using that freedom of expression to create these new ideas.
Yeah, I agree. I'm someone who I hate genres for the sake of boxing things in. You know, when you go on YouTube or SoundCloud or whatever and you have all these comments like, this isn't real folk, hip hop, fusion blend, whatever. It needs to be like this. Or, you know, they're bashing it because it doesn't fit these boxed in things.
Yeah, whereas I think that the genre should just be a way to describe the music. So you say, oh, it sounds like music that sounds like X descriptor, but it also sounds like this music, and it sounds like this music. Like,
yeah, it creates a jumping off point. Like you think, okay, I want to make something that sounds jazzy or sounds like a house type of track, and it gives you a starting point, or it gives you a point of association. So, you know, you have a way to relate to it. And I think that's why sometimes people, when they hear something that breaks genres or, you know, does something new, they're like, wait, how do I associate with this? I no longer have the terminology to feel like I know what's going on. And they're like, that's wrong. I don't like that. You know, there's that pushback.
Because they're used to associating with it in a very specific way. And so suddenly they're being asked to associate with those ideas in a somewhat different way. And that's uncomfortable a lot of times, especially if you're not familiar with like taking something that like that and changing it.
Yeah. And I think that it always saddens me to see artists get, you know, negative feedback or pushback when they try something new or expand outside of their, you know, quote unquote genre that they create in, because I think that modern music is really about experimentation and seeing what you can do because of all of the technology and tools that we have at our disposal. Why not try it? Why not do something new? Why not push the boundaries? Like I think that's the point of any art, is to continue treading new path. And so it hurts me to see other artists getting, you know, flamed about it, because I think that that's the most important thing for them to do. And it might not be something that I even like. I might be like, I like their other stuff better, but the fact that they're willing to try it is really inspiring, you know, especially bigger name artists too.
I think part of the issue too is that a lot of people don't understand the difference between like taste and preference, and then like artistic quality,
Right.
and artistic effort. Like, just because something isn't your taste or your preference doesn't mean it's like bad or not worthwhile. It just means that, okay, you don't have a taste for that, so
Yeah.
go listen to something else. Like, end of story. Like, it really, I think the part of the problem comes from when people hear something that they don't like. And this is especially true with music for whatever reason. When people hear something that they don't like, it's like they're angry for being made to have listened to it in the first place. Like,
Right, they're like,
angry
how-
that it exists at all.
How
Like-
dare this even be around? Like, I shouldn't have to listen to this garbage. It's like, okay, well then don't. If you
Which
don't
I
like
think
it,
is
but-
just like a very entitled attitude, right?
It's-
like,
it's
there
an-
must be no music made that I don't approve of.
it's a very entitled kind of millennial internet thing, because you've got the anonymity of the internet. You have that sort of like instant desired gratification thing all going on mixed into this ball of why.
Yeah.
Directed at the poor artist that just wants to, make something new and unique and cool.
I mean, so you get some like really fantastic artists who are making some very interesting combinations of music, especially between like, maybe like jazz and some like electronic styles, for example. And you get a lot of fans, quote unquote fans, who will go on there and just be like, oh, garbage. This is trash.
Mhm.
Like, and just like posting that kind of stuff. And I mean, obviously, those comments and their opinions as close to nil value as you can possibly get. But at the
Right.
same time, it definitely is disheartening to see how prevalent that is and how prevalent that behavior is. Like, when people talk about, oh, it's just, some comments on the internet, just ignore it. It's like, well, it's just crazy to see how much of like communication in some of these places, like on YouTube, for example, is filled with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's like a good half, at least in most cases, I would say.
Yeah, and it is really, I think, it does just have to do with the internet. Like, if you were somewhere and you saw that person perform live or that group perform live, and you're like, wow, I feel this strongly about it, you're not going to go up to them and be like, garbage, utter trash, and then like walk
people
off.
do. So,
Well,
but yeah, I mean,
it happens more so on the internet because you don't.
which is
have
funny
that.
because they're not even paying for it there. Whereas
Right.
in the live performance sense, they're probably more likely to have paid for it.
Yeah, and I think again though you're totally right in that it shouldn't be this thing that like I've heard music that is poorly done in the sense that someone is either new or they don't really know, I guess, what they're doing. Not that I know what I'm doing when I make music, but like in terms of just having things sound like music, like a cohesive put together track. I've heard stuff that doesn't fit that, and I'm like, this isn't good because it doesn't sound like a piece of music. I've heard stuff that definitely does sound like a piece of music that makes no sense to me at all whatsoever, and really I did not like. But I'm not going to trash that piece of music because I didn't like it, because it's apparent that, they've put in this effort. And even the piece of music that I didn't think sounded like was music or was, really constructed by someone who knew what they were doing, I'm also not going to trash that either, because I was there, I was there throwing loops together in GarageBand, not having any idea what really fit, and just being like, sure,
Yeah.
let's throw 15 loops on top of each other. That sounds good. Like, no. But I think that people are just too harsh and too quick to be critical of things.
Mhm.
Not that critiquing is bad. It's good, but
That's not a critique.
no,
That's the thing.
garbage. Utter trash. No, they're not. You're right. They're not critiques.
That's not a critique.
They're just reaction bot spamming.
That's not even a
Shenanigans.
criticism. Like, a criticism actually offers something of value. Yes, you can have a harsh or unwarranted criticism, but it's still saying like there is something that needs to be improved, and it's like identifying what that is. Whereas if you're just saying trash or garbage, the thing you're identifying that needs to be improved is your own like ability to interact with other humans.
Yes, definitely. A+ to that one. Good diagnosis.
I am the doctor.
The doctor is in. Isn't that one of your songs?
Yes. Well, one of the tentative names, because I never know what the fuck to name my tracks. This is actually one of the largest barriers I have to actually releasing things sometimes. So I'm like, I have no idea what the hell to name this.
Yeah, I have a lot of like work in progress names for a lot of my tracks. Honestly,
Maybe the next one
sometimes
should just be called I don't know.
yeah, but I did for a number of them that I mean the titles might even still stick, that were works in progress, I opened up like the dictionary on my computer and just like typed in a word that I thought sounded cool and went to the thesaurus and found a word that sounded even more like weird. And I was like, yeah, that works. I don't know what it means, but that sounds good. That's a title. That's edgy, right? So there you
Pretty
go.
awesome.
So if you ever need help naming a piece of art,
don't ask either of us.
Go to the thesaurus. Go to the source. The thesauruses.
A brontothesaurus?
Yeah, no. I think that's nope. Yep. Hey, yeah. We're clearly one with the naming of things. Have you noticed the like titles of these podcast episodes?
They're all just like memes and or jokes and or meme jokes. Or
clearly
memes.
We know how to name things and give them titles.
Clearly.
I think Tune Into Gaming was like the best title we've ever come up with our collective minds.
I'm just really surprised
together.
that no one had taken that name before for anything. Like,
it's true.
Honestly, real talk.
Real talk.
Yeah.
But there you have it, I think, unless there's any other things we wanted to discuss.
Yeah. I mean, we've raced through the content that we've had for today.
Yeah, from. So anyway, we're on Twitter at Tune Into Gaming if you want to tweet or at us.
Tweet or twatter.
Yeah. We also have the email thing, tuneintogaming@gmail.com. Either of those. If you want to shoot us a comment or question or tell us we're garbage or utter trash, that's cool.
Utter trash? Is that the trash that gets produced from a cow after you milk it? Sounds gross.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Yeah, hit us up. You know, if there's something you'd like to see us talk about, let us know.
But
you won't see it. You'll only hear it.
There you go. I was going to say, if you want to see us talk about it, sucks. You're out of luck because you ain't going to see nothing. But yeah, definitely.
Nothing.
Let us know. Good stuff.
Let us know. Let us know. Let us know.
So anyway,
Merry Christmas. Tune out.